Hello, hello. Can everybody hear us? Testing 1, 2, 3. We are starting the live show, and I know Deborah is already in the room. And this is Cindy from Part-Time Permies.
And Michael from Part-Time Permies.
And we haven't been on our live in 2 weeks because last week was Easter. So just want to make sure people can hear us. If you can, please type in the chat. I know there might be a little bit of a delay, and I know our stream said that it is okay and not great. So hopefully there's not too much of a lag on things here. Just checking on things. Yay, you can hear us. Hi, Bree and Valerie and Deborah. Welcome. And I'm going back and forth between screens. So I hope everyone had a happy Easter. We didn't do a whole lot for Easter other than work around the house, but did get a bunch of that done. A lot of outdoor work. So I am actually going to see if I could put the chat screen back in its normal place.
Well, we made egg salad. We
made egg salad.
We went to Easter church, and then we worked around the house. So
yes. Yeah.
We took it easy. Nobody was coming over. So.
Yes. So we didn't have family over. We didn't go visit family this year, but we did get some stuff done outside. And my father-in-law is still here, so he might cross behind us here in a second, because he's been helping actually down in the basement. Because this week been doing a lot on the renovations in the kitchen, and there he goes. And I'm trying to see if my chat will show up in this window. Sorry, I'm trying to play with things here. Okay. I don't see any chat coming through. Actually, can you?
It was up earlier, wasn't it?
I had it separate. There we go. Okay. Anyway. I'll just keep it up separate then. So yeah, I mean, we've been working. You've been working hard on the basement with your dad, and getting the kitchen ready.
Finished the ceiling almost. Doing a lot of plumbing this week. A lot of plumbing's been a little difficult. It's taken all week, and we're trying to finish some drains today. But
yeah. And the construction guys came in and put a door in.
We got a door in yesterday. It's not finished, but.
It's in.
We actually have a door. It's got a lot of leaks and holes, and no finishing or insulation, but it's a working door. I don't even think it has hardware on it yet.
Oh no.
It still needs steps, but we got a basic door.
So we're getting there on that. So that's been a big project for you. I've been working on editing videos most of the week, and things along those lines. But I wanted to start with, hi Finite World. I wanted to start with couple things that were going on Easter. Let me see if I could get this transitioned. Playing with pictures again. So last week on Easter, we were putting leaves down into our garden and moving them out of our front yard where we're supposed to have grass grow. Eventually our front yard will be a food forest, so it won't be so much grass as other plants maybe eventually. And hello, Cherry Jean. So we spent a lot of Easter Day moving leaves.
Yeah, Saturday. Was it Saturday? No, earlier in the week.
It was Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, we moved
last weekend.
5 trailer loads of leaves. 3 trailer loads. We had moved most of them in the fall, but it snowed early, and we had them all piled up, but we didn't get the last 3 loads moved out of the front.
So we got those moved and ready for our big garden area. Of course, after that, we got more snow.
We might get up to an inch tonight again, too.
Oh, boy. Well, they keep saying
limited.
They keep saying up to 1 to 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches, and we've been on the southern end of most of it, so we just got dustings. But
we pulled the taps on the maple, too.
Yes, we did. We did pull the taps on the maple trees. In fact, that was part of, well, not the pulling of the taps, but we'll go back here. We did have a video going up on boiling the syrup down and the finishing up the maple season, and kind of the benefits and limitations of home maple syrup, especially when we're boiling the syrup or boiling the sap down to syrup in the house. So that was
One of our neighbors says the same thing. She says she likes the humidity.
yes.
I burned 2 batches, one really bad. She burned a batch really bad, set off her smoke alarms, but her alarms didn't go off. The bad part is her husband's a firefighter, so she was in a lot of trouble. They didn't burn anything down. They just had made a lot of smoke, which is what I did too. But,
Yeah. Did you set up the fire alarms the second time? Or no?
oh, yeah.
You did.
Oh, yeah, I had a ton of smoke.
Yeah.
Because remember, I thought bread was baking.
Yes, but I wasn't home for that.
Yeah, I had like 3 feet of smoke at the ceiling. It was just, caramely smoke. It wasn't any fire. It was just...
Not good. But I came home, and as soon as I drove into the garage, I could smell it. And I'm like, oh, there goes another batch of maple syrup.
And I vented some of the smoke out through the garage.
Yeah, so it still smelled
for 2
like
days, it smelled like caramel, dark caramel in the house.
Yeah, but we did get a video up on wrapping up the maple season. Yeah, that's the disadvantage. One disadvantage of boiling it down in the house is that you could potentially, if you miss it, set off the smoke detectors and make the whole house smell like burned sugar. But it does put off a lot of moisture into the air, so you do kind of turn your house into a bit of a sauna during that time as well.
If it's really cold and dry, it's not all bad because
no, it's not.
Humidify the house.
Yeah, and our house tends to be run on the dry side anyway, so that wasn't horrible. Although it did mess up our hood over our stove.
Temporarily, I think it's back to normal.
Well, one side says F1 and the other side says the clock.
Oh, I think I just have to hit the buttons on it.
And F1 means fan level 1, which is not running. So I'm not sure. I think we shorted it out a little bit.
No, the fan works. Yeah, we just need to reset it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was an interesting time. We also had a new flock edition. So we added, I had a video on adding Rooster to our Silky flock and bringing him home. So let me actually show you our new rooster, our new Silky rooster. We had, this is Zebra. He was a 4-H rooster. He's about a year old. And a person, well, not that I don't directly work with, but I know through work, her daughter had this rooster for 4-H last year. So they were selling it, got it for like $15. Silky roosts tend to run a little bit more expensive than other types of roosters. But I did put a little video on that. He was isolated for about a week just to make sure he wasn't coming in with any, diseases or anything. You can really isolate him up to 2 weeks, but he was getting lonely in that little nursery tractor coop that we had. So yeah, he's a cute guy. He's actually not shy at all. So he's used to being handled. I could pick him right up. He'll come eat out of my hand and things. So he's a good guy, mainly because he's used to being handled by a kid. So, a teenager. But most of our flock is not used to being handled because we have, hens raise our chickens. So it's kind of interesting to have that. Although some of my hens will eat straight out of my hand. This guy will actually let me pick him up and stuff too, which is nice to have in a rooster. Third video over the last couple weeks was a part of a collaboration. So I don't know if you guys have seen it, but we were a part of the Frugal Family Food collaboration with Tangi and Amanda at Freedom Homestead is Tangi's page, and the Fundamental Home is Amanda's page, and they both run this co-run this collaboration that they have different people put out a video on frugal cooking every Friday. So we did that as well, and we made coq au vin. Or I should say Mike made. I recorded and edited the coq au vin video. So that was nice because we used one of our own chickens for that, one of our 35-week roosters that we butchered a couple of weeks ago. And it was definitely hard to edit that one down to under 20 minutes. I think I got it to about 20 minutes, but it has a lot of information in it. So if you're interested in learning how to make coq au vin, you should check that one out as well.
That's pretty classical recipe.
Yeah.
French restaurants and countryside bistros. Well, it's really a country cooking, and so that was a part of, even though it's a little fancier and more intensive than most of what Frugal Family is, mostly home cooks doing one pots and simple things that are also inexpensive. This was able to, if you use your garden and you use your own chickens, and you use some leftover wine or wine vinegar or other things, it's actually pretty reasonable for sure. It takes a little bit of time. You got to braise it out.
Yeah.
Take 3 or 4 hours of prep and cooking, mostly cooking.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really probably originally a French country dish. Like
it is.
Like
it's
farm.
It's a winter after butchering, root vegetables. The wines come in.
Yeah.
And it's French, but you could be in Alsace, you could be in Germany, you could be a lot of places and do this.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't cook worth anything, Valerie. So I will eat almost anything, or at least try almost anything.
So in a big city, if I cleaned this item up a little bit and just worked my vegetables and my sauce a little tighter, I would probably charge $29, maybe up into the mid-30s, depending on if I put some truffles in there, it might be $35 on this plate. But we did it simple.
So. Yeah, but also if you have almost all of this stuff you can raise on your own property. In our region, probably not the wine so much. I mean, there are some vineyards.
Oh, we have vineyards. We got tons of vineyards.
Oh, yeah, we have vineyards, but not like...
They just charge too much money. I didn't use any local wine. I use cheap California wine.
But we don't grow our own grapes and make wine.
You could totally do this off of one property that had chickens and some vines.
Yeah, and some, kitchen gardens and things. So very easy to bring pretty much all from your own property and make it almost completely self-sustainable, but not hard to do from getting, $5, $4 grocery store wine and things like that.
I didn't do the food cost on it. I happened to get some cheap pearl onions, had some carrots and onions and celery because we're out of them at this point. Cheap wine, $5 bottle of wine, some old cheap mushrooms. And so the total cost on it was, I had some nice fresh herbs, which I get from from our school growing program, which are low cost. Mm-hmm. Again, they're pretty optional, so it didn't cost very much. And you get at least six portions out of a chicken.
So we had that. Those were the 3 main videos. I now have recorded about 3 more to edit and put together over the next week or so. So definitely have been busy. I did not do a video on us moving leaves because I've done that before. So you can always check that out if you want to look into that. But that was probably last spring, I want to say, when we did that. Probably in May or something. We were late start last year. But yeah.
I don't know if you did a video on last spring or if you did it this fall when we were.
I think it was when we first did it, but I don't know.
Moving leaves. Everybody knows how to move leaves.
But why we put them on the garden and all that.
Yeah.
So kind of a makeshift back to Eden. Instead of using wood chips, we use leaf mulch. The other thing I've been doing over the last couple days is actually see if you could guess what I was doing. If you look at this picture, I have almost all my tools I need. But I will have a video on this coming out soon. So does anybody know what I've been up to based on the items in the picture? Any guesses? Any guesses? And I think there's probably a little delay here going on, so give it a second. But see if you have it. See if you have it. I don't see any guesses
I think you were
yet.
probably making Elliot Coleman poses.
Elliot Coleman poses?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if any of you guys know who Elliot Coleman is.
Book cover poses.
Yeah, seed starting, of course, with the perlite in there makes sense, but using soil blocks, which is Elliot Coleman idea or method of starting seeds is to do it with soil blocks.
Instead of as many planters and containers and jamming containers full of dirt.
Yeah, and for that matter, yeah, soil blockers in that picture. There's some advantages to that. If you have a soil block, you're not wasting all of those plastic containers, which you can reuse up to a point, but
I do a lot of sanitizing and cleaning if you want to be very careful with them where you take your luck.
Yeah. Now, I still use a plastic tray to put them on because I have them around. Some people will build their own trays out of wood, and that works too, because you're not overwatering them. You're actually just you spray them down with water, so you mist them. But these soil blocks are nice because the roots don't get bound in that. So if the roots get to the edge of the soil block and get to the air, they stop growing instead of getting bound up. And then when you see roots around the edges of the soil block, that's when you need to transplant them. So, Terry Jean, your celery finally sprouted yesterday.
I don't know if we even planted celery.
I did in this batch, but it's so late that I have no idea if it'll do anything, because I should have done that. For the celery, it should have been started basically in February. You get some air pruning, yes, with the soil blocks, exactly. So it is a nice setup. I used it a little bit last year, but I didn't follow the recipe exactly. So for this video, I'm basically downsizing the recipe that Elliot Coleman uses, because he measures it in units or in buckets, like 5-gallon buckets of things. So I basically downsize it. So that video will be coming out sometime this week. Because I was doing seed starting this weekend, I also put together a quick little video for Rose. Rose at Wholesome Roots has a collaboration on 3 new things that you're planting this year. So I did put that together real quick. So that will be coming out probably first. But just to kind of show you, we have, I think, 6 trays of these soil blocks full of seeds. So I did everything from onions and celery to the tomatoes and peppers and ground cherries, and we did some greens and some of those, and some brassicas and all that. So we definitely started everything all at once. We do have greens growing outside in our garden under hoops, but I want to get the next batch started here soon. And obviously you can actually, for the cold hardy plants, you can also go ahead and plant those outside even right now. So even though we were 19 degrees this morning, I think it was when I woke up. It was cold. It was cold this morning. We had a hard frost last night. But things like spinach and kale and all that, you can go ahead and start seeding. So we'll be starting that. I'll probably go ahead and put some seeds in. I was hoping to today, but outside. But didn't get to that, so it'll probably be during the week sometime. So we did that. Trying to see if I had anything else in there.
And I got seeds also that haven't gone in yet for a couple of larger projects.
Yeah. You want to tell what you're doing with the yard?
Yeah, so I was talking, originally I was looking at the end of a garden season 2 seasons ago for some manure cover crop, because we don't have any nitrogen in our soil naturally, very, very little. And I found that Michigan State has a pea and bean and legume blend that they've sort of figured out that's a fall manure crop. And they sold it at a local seed store, and it was pretty local grown stuff, so it was really matched for our area. Went down there and bought it. Unfortunately, that store's kind of changed hands or gone out of business and changed over. A big seed company bought them out, so couldn't get down there easily. So I went to another store, and what we decided to do was for the front tree area, which is missing a lot of grass, I wanted to get some overseeding. But we decided we're going to put in pasture grass. So it would be a grass that's typically grown for cows and sheep and goats. It's 4 or 5 or 6 different items. It's got, I don't think there's any alfalfa in it, but it's got a bunch of larger things that'll grow progressively, and some will last a little longer than others, and it'll get cut. Ideally, it should be cut probably about 6 inches high. It's baleable if you wanted straw or you wanted to graze on it, but I think we may only be able to cut about 4 inches high. So we're going to try and see how much of it comes in and cut it 4 inches, but I do think I have to get an injection. I have to get a seeder. I don't have an injection seeder because that's big farm equipment and we don't have enough room.
No.
Our local conservation department actually has leasable or borrowable seeding equipment for injection seeding, but again, you need a farm tractor and we have too many trees in the way. It's not worth it. Won't work. So I'll probably use a grass seed injector or seeder for that. And then we're going to try and grow pasture grasses. We'll cut them like a lawn, but it'll be a mix of clovers and grasses. And then we'll let them grow up during the week. They'll probably grow 4, 5, 6 inches or so, and we'll cut them down and see how that goes. Create some extra thatch and things and see how that goes. So that's going to be in the front. The only downfall to that is you need about 50, minimum 50, and probably closer to 100 pounds of seed per acre. And that's pretty expensive. It's about approaching $200 for 50 pounds of seed because it really is pasture grasses, and so limit on how much you want to use on that. And you know, if you overseed it, obviously it'll grow better. Or depending on how it's not so good to broadcast. Well, any seed you broadcast doesn't grow that well.
Yeah.
And then in the back, we just got in 50 pounds. We got a pea bean legume, sort of a cover crop, not a fall, but sort of a
general cover
crop. So we're going to blend that with a chicken forage crop that we got from Urban Farmer, I think it is. That's a little less. It's about half the price. It's about $100 for, no, it's about $200 for an acre. So it's still pricey, but that has peas and beans and legumes and a whole bunch of grains, millet, flax. There might be some buckwheat. We have some buckwheat we're going to intersperse in there, and some other things. So we're actually going to do the pea, bean, clover, alfalfa, and the grains, and we're going to mix them into an area that we only cut once a year. I'll probably just do a little cut, although the tractor's in the shop getting its once a year oil change and maintenance on it. Send it down to the shop. So we're going to probably put that in soon while we still have some water because we don't irrigate back there. We're going to hope that it just grows an abundance of grasses and grains, some of them targeted towards chickens, and it will also grow among the other wild grasses and flowers, and the chickens will be able to forage on that.
We will pasture the chickens back there on that part, so the hope is to cut down on some of the feed we're feeding the chickens over the summer by foraging them on a little more sustainable foraged grains and such in our backyard.
And my thought was, I was like, geez, you spend $100 on a bunch of seeds. That's a bunch of money, but we just had a $90 feed bill for the next number of weeks. So I'm like, well, if it actually works and they progressively eat at smaller plants or some of it goes to seed, and if it might replace $100 of feed pretty quick, and it may actually counteract or pay or more than pay for itself, which is the point. I do know some people put brassicas and other things, and then I talked to our local feed guy. He goes, well, I get in grains and plantable high quality seeds and grains and legumes, mostly for feed. He goes, I used to do a chicken blend going back a few years ago, and I do 10-pound bags and sell it. And he said I made a lot of money on it because I haven't done it for a while, but he sells it way cheaper. And I said, well, geez, next time we're going to tell you he has a blender, a mixer, and the problem is, and he just got a mixer that has an open chute because he says otherwise he can't get it all out properly.
Okay.
So I was like, well, geez, maybe next spring or winter I'll bug him. Why don't you make a few 100 pounds and just put all kinds of grains and peas and beans and things in, and then we'll take a small amount, but it sold so well. I'll just encourage him to do that again.
Yeah.
I think that'll be half the price of our current project.
Yeah. So So yeah, we're gonna experiment with that this year, see how it goes, and then may have better sources next year is the whole goal. So, which would be awesome. So
And we want to build the soil back
yes,
there. So it's a two-part. We want more thatch, and we want to build the soil. We don't necessarily want to run out the native stuff there, but it's sort of a mixed area. So
yeah,
it's a improve the soil and feed the chicken
yeah.
project.
That area back there has a lot of things like Queen Anne's lace and black-eyed Susans, and it has clover, but it tends to have the rabbit foot clover more, which I know for people is not edible. I don't know about the chickens. Um, and then some daisies and stuff like that. They're all growing wild back there. So we kind of let that grow up through the year anyway, and it really does look pretty. Last year was so dry that barely any of it
I'm
grew.
concerned we may have lost some stuff because
Yeah.
the chickens pecked and scratched it down. And
So
then with the
much.
8 weeks of dry weather, I think we may have actually lost some items. We'll see what pops up though.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see where that goes, but then we'll be able to put the chickens back on that. The chickens new as soon as it gets warm enough, I'll be moving the chickens into their tractor, which is more of a summer coop, and putting them in the garden to help fertilize and add some nitrogen to all that carbon we just added with the leaves. So they'll be headed into the garden for probably a couple weeks. I'm hoping maybe next weekend I'll be able to do that, and then um, at the beginning of May they'll be closer to the house, so hopefully everything can start growing in the back. Plus, I'll be out of town. We'll both be out of town for a week in May, or part of a week, with my dad coming to take care of the house and chickens. It'd be easier for him if they're closer to the house. Um, so we're gonna have them up there, and then hopefully everything will be sprouting enough by like mid-May that we might be able to move them back on that pasture and start grazing them on that new pasture. So that's the goals. Um, Now, another video, by the way, that I have coming out is going to be on overlapping topic here on our Herb of the Week. Herb of the Week this week, if you guys noticed, was ramps, which I don't know if you really considered it a herb, but it is a wild forage food. And I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to try to play a little clip of a video, part of what will be coming out. So I might need your help to tell me if you can hear it. I will switch it over here and then mute us for a minute and unmute the video. So here we go. Let's try this new trial. So you can see from the shoots it has a long flat leaf. That these will grow a lot bigger. These are still quite young. The bottoms of the ramps are red, and that's a fairly key identifying factor of ramps. And at the bottom, there's this little bulb that you can eat. Now, I'm not going to eat these. I'm going to plant these. We don't have any really wet areas, but we do have some quite well mulched areas that hold moisture a little better. So we will plant them in those areas. Sorry, I muted us and I forgot to unmute. There we go. That should work now. Anyway, those ramps came from Nabi, our foraging guide. So you should check out her our playlist of foraging, and you can probably see it in some of our playlists, is what I was saying while I was muted. Sorry about that. And just a response to the warm up coming up. Yes, by next weekend it should be warm. So I'm hoping it'll stay at least decently warm and not in the teens at night after that. But yeah, we're supposed to get up to like 60 on Friday here.
It continues to be a really cold March and April this year.
Not next week.
Yeah, well, we're halfway into April by that time.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's time to be warming up a little bit.
Okay. So, yes, by the way, there's a delay on the chat. So that's why I didn't realize it was muted for a minute, because the chat I think there's a delay getting to the live screen. So as I'm reading the chat, it's probably about, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds after I've said what I said. So anyway, so yes, we are getting a warm up. So hopefully we can move the chickens out. But the ramps, by the way, are the herb of the week. You can check out the herb of the week blog in the webpage, which I have in the description below, if you'd like to check them out. Can you plant them near the downspouts?
That's
yes.
what we're doing.
So
basically.
yeah, I mean, not actually, we only have a couple downspouts, and they lead so far into our yard.
And they come out a little too fast. Yeah.
But what we are doing is we have some eaves on our house that don't have gutters. So we are planting them under those eaves where it rains more, and I was going to add some more leaf mulch to the ones under our eaves here to help retain that moisture there. We also have a woodshed with a roof over it, and that is actually backed into the woods. So I planted more behind our woodshed, where it's more damp as well. In fact, there's such thick leaf mulch, it's almost like a little natural hugelkultur, because there's all the broken down wood underneath that leaf mulch from like cutting wood and stuff there. A lot of wood pieces. The leaf mulch on top is like about 6 to 8 inches thick, and you pull off one layer of that leaf mulch and it is damp, and you can see all these mycelium from all the mushroom mycelium growing through there. So basically I've cleared, I put more back there, but I did put some back there last
Fundamental
fall.
Home checking in.
Hello, Fundamental Home. Hi. So yes, we did our collaboration. I did mention it in our video earlier, so check that out too. Our that released on Friday in collaboration with the Fundamental Home and Freedom Homestead. Anyway, so I've been planting more ramps, which will come out in another video this week. And ramps are interesting. So I did kind of go over in that little video clip how to identify them, kind of where they want to grow. They do like wet areas. And the problem is we don't have any like streams or anything on property. Our soil is so sandy, the water just goes straight through it. So unless it's extremely well mulched, it's really hard to get things that like damp to grow.
Even the mulch dries out by midsummer, so yeah. So using the eaves
helps.
Was our idea last fall to try and preserve them. We'll see when we get to the middle of the summer if they survive, but so far so good.
Yeah.
Water coming off of there. We do get some pretty heavy rains.
Yeah.
And I like the woodshed too because it's right on the heavy tree line, so it does stay shadowed and a lot cooler, and we get the sunrise and set. In fact, it's between the woodshed, the house, and the forest. It's darker over there.
Yeah.
So we're more likely to keep it moist for most of the year.
And they are shade tolerant plants. I mean, they grow in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, they prefer a moderate shade.
They prefer hardwoods, which actually that section back there is all hardwood. Most of our property of the wooded areas, all new growth, mainly pine and some hardwoods mixed in. So back there, it's not so great. But now, one thing I did want to mention when you're looking at ramps, if you have any coming up near you, you do have to pay attention because there are a lot of bulbs that look kind of similar as they're just starting to come up. And there's some bulbs that are poisonous, so you want to make sure you know what you're getting, and that might mean looking at them when they come up one year and making mental note of where they're coming up, and then going back the next year and harvesting some. But one of the key factors is that the ramps on the lower stem are bright red. So I think you can see that in that little video
red
clip.
or purple with the white. I don't know if you have to wait another year. If they've just sprouted,
Yeah.
you'll see the green, and that could
Show
be
you.
mistaken for a few items. But you give it another few days, and literally in the right conditions, it's a few days or sometimes a week. And as they start to stem, you'll see first that pink sheath, and then you'll see the pinkish purple stem, and it will become pretty clear. And of course, they smell like onions.
Yes, they do
So.
smell like onions. So this is actually what they look like right now in our area. They haven't fully leafed out yet, but if you look behind them in this picture, there's other plants coming up, and those are other bulbs. So they don't have that red at the base of the stem, so they definitely are different. But otherwise, these leaves can kind of resemble. Sorry, go back to us. They can kind of resemble uh, like lily leaves.
Yeah, the lily at the very beginning start on the lily leaves. The lily leaves will quickly grow up and start to spread out wider and thicker. But when you're catching them, you think you got a really young ramp. You might possibly have a lily leaf. But.
Yeah, and of course, if they're daylilies, and you know they're daylilies, those are edible. However, if they're lily of the valley, which are a much smaller plant anyway, which are a
is
little
what
different,
they're more likely to look like a ramp.
they look a little more like lily of the valley as they're just starting to come up. Except lily of the valley don't have that red base, but lily of the valley are poisonous, so you don't want to mistake those. Yeah, Valerie.
They don't smell like.
They don't smell the
oniony.
same.
Ramps, by the way, don't smell like the garlic chives and the green onions. They have a more perfumey, milder but kind of funky, pungent, funky smell.
Yes, and eat them like onions.
Yeah, you eat them. You use them like scallions. You use the bottom white part. You either saute it quickly or you pickle it.
You can also use the greens. You can actually
yes,
young greens.
But the greens you may more likely you can either saute or grill the whole thing.
Yeah.
The greens you may take off and do things like make pestos with it. Mm-hmm. You typically don't pickle the greens because the greens turn color and get slimy. So you want to pickle the stem, the stem and the small bulb on it. Just cutting the root in. I still have some pickled ramps from the end of last year in the fridge. There's just a few left, and they're still really good.
Yeah. So, and you can like chop them up and put them in omelets. You can put them in a lot of places where
they're mild, they're mild like shallots and scallions, where you can definitely eat them raw and mince them small and put them into a salad or a salad dressing or a drizzle, or you can quick cook them. Usually, you cook them very, very quick. Again, like a shallot or like a scallion, and that's why they're so precious. Chefs about 20, maybe a little more than 20 years ago, really fell in love with them, and they became popular. Foraging them in bags full. Yeah. They run like $20 a pound wholesale into the bigger cities, $25 a pound, and sometimes they're not even cleaned yet. They're just clods of dirt on them, and so they're pretty expensive because there's only a short run. They run a few weeks. You might get a month or a little more, and then they get kind of big, and you don't want them when they're bigger. Although you can take the root a little later.
You can take the root. The bulb almost any point of the year. I did read that if it's in flower, the bulb doesn't taste as good, but in the fall it starts to taste good again, and in the spring when you're very
typically people just forget about them after the spring, the first
it's hard
4
to
to
remember.
6 weeks. Yeah, and the other thing is people take out professional foragers will take them by the clump and just pull out. You'll find them by thousands in some areas, so they're pretty prevalent. You can take a lot, but
you want to be careful because
it's good to leave 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, or you may not have ramps when you come back next year.
Yes.
And they will grow back year after year if you just halfway reasonably harvest them. You know.
And the thing is, another thing I read with them is they do grow and multiply quite easily when they're young, but as they get older, that growth slows down quite a bit. So if you do have a good established, area of ramps and you go really taking a lot of them, they're actually slower to bounce back than the ones that are very young. So you do always want to leave some of the bulbs from each section, because if they come in bunches, and the one thing I don't have yet is the mature pictures, but if you have a bunch of ramps growing like what I had in my hand and they're full grown, they kind of create this clump of these oblong leaves,
Yeah, they
It
bunch.
looks like one plant from above, but it's really a bunch of bulbs. Each plant has about 2 to 3 leaves off of it. But so you don't want to really take a whole clump. You really want all of those are basically clones of each other. They're basically um, replicated from the original plant.
Just
So
like
if you
splitting
leave
tulips or anything else.
exactly,
Yeah.
you want to leave a couple of those behind from each clump, so that there's some diversity out there as well. Instead of leaving a whole clump behind, you take parts of clumps and harvest that way, and leave parts of clumps
So
behind.
I would say people that are in northern Indiana, maybe central Indiana, on up, and sort of maybe northern Kentucky. I don't know even that far. Cooler areas, your ramps are just starting or
Yeah,
they're mid season.
it's right
Anybody
now.
that's going beyond that, they're fleeting. They mature over a period of, like I said, a few weeks. Maybe if you push the edge of forest into deeper forest, you can extend 4, 5, 6 weeks by going to different locations.
Yeah,
But you may only be on your one location for a week, 2 weeks. So they go quick, and then they move up across, up through the country into Canada.
yeah,
So for chefs, we get them shipped in from specialty companies, and they move from the West Coast, and a little bit mid-country all the way, moving forward into the far north.
yeah.
Um,
So they are.
yeah.
They do. You can find them almost anywhere where there's wet areas of
Yeah,
the
I don't know if they
country.
grow in the south or not. How
They do
far
grow
south they go?
They do grow in the south, but it's closer to like
Probably
end of winter.
February or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
early catch.
In fact, in the south, I believe, or some regions anyway, I forget where, they call them wild leeks rather than ramps. And technically, a lot of people do call them that, and they're the same, meaning the same thing. But these are not related at all to regular leeks. As far as they're their own thing, they're not any more related to leeks than they are to like onions or garlic or any other allium. They are basically their own category of allium.
So
Which
what
is
we like to
interesting.
do is marinate them a little bit, a little salt, pepper,
Hmm.
and you touch them on a grill for just a moment, or you touch them in a hot pan and you saute them for 20 seconds. You just wilt them, and then you put them on a plate, or you actually blend the ramp into like making a vinaigrette or a dressing raw. You blend it in there, um, but it's a very very fleeting, delicate, quick cook item, and it gives a lot of flavor. So they really are of sort of like. Um, Morels are such a big deal, and it's the same type of thing. We just didn't have as long of a tradition of using them, and now they're highly prized.
Yeah, so they're taking off again. Um, and for that matter, if you have an area where you have abundance of them, you could probably sell them to your local restaurants at a decent price
We
too.
had yeah, and in most states there's no restriction on selling plant material to a restaurant. It should be positively identified, but it's not like mushrooms or meat
Right.
or eggs. I don't think most states you can direct sell. Farmers markets, our local market, I think only one person is selling ramps right now. They were $7 for a quart, and somebody came by and laughed at her and said, they started out $4. Baby little, really delicate ones are super hard to find. They were just poking out of the earth for $4 a pint. And I said, oh my gosh, you should double the price on them, and it's so worth every bit of it. And so now $7 for a quart of a little more matured. And again, it's still so undervalued because even in our area, in our specific farmers market, has less specialty people going there that they don't sell. And I'm like, you know what? They're worth $20. Well, if they're $20 a pound wholesale to me into a restaurant, they're probably going for $10 a pound to the wholesaler.
Yeah.
But if they're selling for $7 in the market, so anyways,
Yeah.
there's an economy to it. So the closer you are to them, they become very inexpensive. It's frugal food when you know where to find it, and when you don't, it's really expensive. And then go
So
pickle them so you can use them all year.
yeah, so we are not harvesting any of ours this year. We're gonna hopefully get them to grow.
Oh, I have some here, by the way.
Oh,
I forgot about
okay,
that.
he'll bring some to the camera. Um, we'll hopefully get some to grow, and maybe next year we'll harvest, and this year we'll buy from our forager. Um, you have you have the pickled ones too.
Yeah, I told you I have two pickles. These
Yeah.
are from a week ago, and so they're
starting to wilt a
they're
little
just a little
bit.
dehydrated.
Yeah.
But these are, ideal premium size. You can get a little bigger than this, and then they're getting.
That's primarily the greens.
So either I'm going to grill or saute the whole thing, just clean off the outer skin, just like a leek or an onion. Just wash them. They can be really dirty because they grow in kind of mud, and I'll just trim these up, and I'll either quick saute those into pastas or chop them up or stir fries. Or if you're going to pickle them, you're going to clip them right here.
Hold up. There you go.
You're going to clip them right here at the firm part. Remove this for sauteing or making into pesto, and you're going to pickle this piece.
Yep.
And I pickled these a year ago.
You have the full bulbs in there.
These are the fall, actually. I had never done it before in the fall, so I'm just going to stick my finger in here. So these are matured, and I've never worked with them that big. They're just breaking down a little bit on the edges, but they're still crunchy. And I did them in a heavy vinegar, bay leaf, allspice. I think there's a touch of honey in there. Oh, yes.
You wrote it down.
Coriander, bay leaf, allspice, cloves, honey.
Bay leaf?
Yep, bay leaf. So I use water and cider vinegar, organic cider vinegar in a 2-to-1 ratio. Water to vinegar. And I use 2 ounces of salt and 2 ounces of honey. So it's pretty salty. You could cut the salt back a little bit. But the high salt and the high vinegar, you can even go up to 50-50 vinegar if you want. 50-50 water vinegar. The more vinegar and the higher the salt, the more you keep the crunch if you're not cooking them.
Yeah.
And I was concerned about, obviously I should use these up, but
yeah.
We gotta make some ramp stuff. I've had them all week, but I've been so busy doing renovation stuff, we have not worked with those.
So, do we need to make a video on how to use some ramps?
Probably, because we only got a few weeks with them, and then it's on the next year.
Yep. Maybe we'll do that. You can harvest those bulbs in the fall. I think that's where you
These were in the fall, which I never had before, and they're actually really nice. That's where people forget about them because they know the leaves aren't good. They don't realize.
Well, the leaves dry up, and it's hard to know where they're at.
They really finish and disappear. So you need to you need to mark. The other thing is when they come up in the spring under the leaves, you can get little shoots just barely popping up. They're about 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall, and they're incredibly delicate and a delicacy. But you have to know where they are and go looking for them progressively.
Kind of like my first picture, the young ones.
As the snow comes, yeah,
this size.
That size or even a little younger. So that's when you have to go look for them.
Yeah. So yeah, we could get a video going. We'll have to figure out what you're gonna make with them, but
I haven't made ramp pesto in a long time.
Could do that. Yeah.
Do that.
Could also do. You could do an omelet with some ramps in it.
You can always toss them in things like eggs. Eggs carry delicate flavors of foraged herbs and spices and fiddleheads and mushrooms wonderfully. The delicate flavor of a nice creamy loose cooked egg really accentuates, and if it's a strong flavor, it helps dull down the strong flavor a little bit.
Probably a little bit of that fat in the egg and stuff.
Yep, the fat, the protein, the creaminess, you carry the flavor. So, yeah. Same thing, your garlic chives and your standard onion chives and spring onions, wild onions. It's perfect to use those. In French, they call it a fine herb omelet. Now, that could have tarragon or just chives or chervil, delicate herbs chopped up. And it's a specialty item where you just mix the eggs very loose, and fine herb omelet is really a specialty. People tend to eat that for dinner.
Is that correct spelling?
I think so. I think it may be an E on fine.
Okay.
I think so. Yes, that looks better.
So it's fine, basically, in English, but fine is
So
French.
think about your things that are really delicate and perfumey and don't have any stem. So chervil, chives, parsley, those type of items are your fine herbs, and you just toss a nice handful. You could even put a little shallot in there, and a quickly, well whipped egg, a little fresh whole butter, and you make a quick fold over omelet. And you don't need to put anything else in it. It stands alone as really showing off great flavor and especially when you're using really good eggs. Farm fresh eggs and fresh herbs from your garden.
So anyway, we'll work on that one too. It might not get out this week. Might get recorded this week, but it might take me a little bit of time. So it might be running a week behind on that video. So it'll be probably coming out with the next herb of the week. But we'll get it together so that you can learn how to use that in a couple ways.
We'll probably be out foraging in May, we'll have to see. It's
I
going
have
to
to see. I mean, Nabi does some April foraging, so we should check with her
we'll
and
have
see
to
if she's done it.
we might. Well, she's been out foraging. We just have to see when we go out the first time.
Yeah.
When the group goes out, occasionally we get an invitation to go out. Typically, our schedules don't work.
Well, last year you bought me the whole season of foraging, so every time she went out, she let us know, definitely, because we purchased the whole season. This year we might invite her to our property a few times. That might work. So maybe in May and maybe midsummer and maybe in the fall, and try to get her out to our property a few times. So we'll work on that.
The other exciting thing that I'm doing this week, I forgot about it, is Tuesday I'm taking a field trip to Bristol, Indiana. There's a farmer who specializes in grains. Ancient grains, specialty grains, I think organic or really specialized growing of grains. And so one thing he does is field grown rice versus flooded, floodplain rice. And so there's these older crops that grow without having to flood them out. So I got invited. I'm going with another guy who's a permaculture, 10 acres or so, I think, and a guy who's starting a 13-acre specialty farm program. And so the three of us are going down there on all different tasks. Permaculture. I had found an article on rice that was really interesting that traveled from Africa into the Caribbean. They've mapped it in Trinidad, in a remote area of Trinidad, and they've mapped very similar things in South Carolina. Yeah. These field-grown rices, which are amazing flavor. I can't remember the name.
It was really following the slave routes.
And they've confirmed through the genetics that even though the names have changed a little, this is a near true or a true clone of African slave trade grain, that came, 200-300 years ago from Africa and different areas. And then they've tracked one farmer in Africa who's still growing it, and they just pushed a whole bunch of money. Sean Brock's doing some of that. They pushed some money and stuff to, hey, can you grow more? Can we import it? In fact, he was importing a little bit, so I think we're going to see a really, really neat crop pop up.
You might have to explain who Sean Brock is, for those who don't know.
Oh yeah, Sean Brock's a crazy chef. He's probably one of the best American chefs in the country right now, doing American regional, historically linked food.
And he has a restaurant in Nashville.
He has one in Nashville, one I think in Atlanta now, or Savannah, one in Savannah, and 2 or 3 in
South Carolina.
Yeah, in Charleston.
Okay.
Charleston's his flagship places. So he has won all the awards. He's one of the top chefs, but he does historically linking food and food crops and how they were grown and how they were used.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he uses them in the exact historical way. He is a modern chef, and they're going to do some presentations and play and work with things. But he is pickling and brining and curing and smoking and accessing the best of the best old school hams and bacons and bourbons and whatever. So he's got some amazing videos. Chef Table, he's got a whole, there's one, and then there's a string of them on Mind of Chef, about 6 or 8 where he plays a part or is the host on that.
And those are both on Netflix, by the way. So Chef's Table and Mind of the Chef are both on Netflix.
And then he has some great books. He has a book that came out about 3 or 4 years ago that was award-winning, and to me was one of the most influential books of that year, and continues to be, of how you can be being an American chef and doing truly current food that has very strong historical roots to the farms, and he's explored farm after farm. And products, a lot of the Anson Mill products were presented to him, and the Anson Mills has grown tremendously. But part of it was he has helped, and other chefs like him have helped, so that Anson Mills is a go-to for fine dining. I got to get grits from this farm. I got to get peas or beans or rices or herbs, and Anson Mills is just crazy. If you don't know anything about Anson Mills for food, what they are doing is sort of a activity of love to resurrect heirloom specialty absolutely incredible tasting, so that when you taste grits or you taste these rices, they don't taste like commodity rice. They have these amazing flavors.
It's actually closer to what the original flavor would be.
When either it has to do with growing conditions, and it also has to do with growing them the right way next to the right thing. So they'll do things like, if a migrant group came into South Carolina, which would have been mostly African American slaves, they were given plots of land to grow their own food, and to supplement their food. What did they bring? What did they access? What grew well? How did they grow it? What did they grow next to it? And what did they cook? Yeah. And then they would, and how did they cook it? And so, why are grits so important? Why are pigeon peas and field peas so important? Because we think of them as commodity crops that don't taste very good. One, we don't always cook them right, but mostly we're using commodity feed product that isn't very tasty, because we've commoditized it so much for yield and uniformity. So now when you go back and you use these items that were designed for flavor, you realize that they just blow your mind, and you don't need to spend a lot of money and a lot of time to make. We've been making, for the last year plus, been using grits and cornmeal from a local farm in Michigan. The flavor, the corn flavor and the freshness, because
it's really good.
Insane. Making anything with it.
And hello, Food Forest and YB Family Farm. Awesome. And you guys, we've been on for an hour already, so we did to go over the ramps already, so you might have to go back for the replay or check out the webpage, our webpage below, which has the description there. But I did have a pop quiz for you, and this will be next week's Herb of the Week. So for anyone who knows what this is growing in our backyard, I will do this one as the Herb of the Week next week, which, by the way,
starts... Do we eat it?
Medicinally.
So yeah, medicinally. I don't know if we culinarily use that.
I will look this one up in more detail. I have not started yet, but I will do the medicinal side, and I will try to get some of the PubMed articles to see if there's any research on it as well. So I'll do a little more research on this one. But can anyone identify? It's just starting to grow. It gets a lot bigger than this, but this is a very young plant so far. Anybody guess what this plant is? By the way, those leaves on it are very fuzzy and soft.
Sometimes pretty big.
I haven't heard it called that.
Yeah.
Mullen dock. I've heard it called mullen. I haven't heard the dock part added onto it, but yeah. And I've seen it spelled differently. I've seen an I in there, Mullien. But there's multiple names for things a lot of times too. So yeah, it's excuse me, it's mullen, which it has some medicinal values, which I will look up and just see, what's traditionally. Yep, that's.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, is it EI or IE? I always switch those.
I think it's EI.
So Green Gables, yes, that's how I've seen it. So yes, I will be looking up some of the traditional uses for this one, as well as trying to see if there's any research being done on it. And yes, it's also called the toilet paper plant, or cowboy's toilet paper, because it's really soft and fuzzy and grows pretty big leaves. So it is a safe leaf to use for toilet paper if you're out camping, or if you're doing a type of outward bound type thing. Absolutely. But it can be used for more than just toilet paper, from what I've heard and read. So we'll get into that a little bit more next week. Another one I will throw out there, but it's not a herb. It's just something we happened to notice this week, and I think I know.
It was a week ago, right?
Oh yeah, I guess just over a week ago. I think I know what this is, and I have checked and sent pictures to our the farm that has the foraging people. I think it was actually Nabi's son who responded to me and confirmed.
Oh, was it Tom?
Yeah, I believe so. So this is the top side of this mushroom. It's growing on a down tree.
Yeah, you can dip it in oil and use it for a torch. That is.
Yeah. Oh, for the.
No,
yeah. No, they're talking about that. They're behind. Yeah, mullein for bronchial issues.
Well, this you can use as you get it burning and you pack it away, the embers, you pack it away to hold
Hold your embers.
to hold your embers while you travel.
Okay.
You pack it in and you can travel with it.
Well, there's other things. The underside of this is white, and this is very hard, and you can actually draw on this. So if anybody knows what this one is, as long as I'm identifying it correctly,
So.
but I believe I'm like 90% sure.
It's not an edible.
Not an edible. It's just.
It might have a medicinal if you
I'd have to look
it
that
or
up.
tincture it.
I don't know.
Thinking I remember, but you don't generally eat it much.
I think it was mainly being used. This was mainly used for giving instructions and leaving markers on trails and things like that by the natives. You could draw pictures on it as a clue. You could draw pictures on that underside white area, and it gets its name from that.
Tree conch.
Yeah, tree conch, artist conch. Lots of different spellings on that one. So yeah, it's a kind of fun mushroom there. And I gotta find the webcam again. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I saw that on one of our foraging vlogs. Absolutely. I think towards the end of summer, I believe, maybe it was September or something that we found some, or August. It might have been August, because I think it was when we went to another property and not on Nobby's property that we did find it.
That one.
Yeah. So you could check out our foraging playlist if you're interested in those foraging blogs, led by Nobby. So we're, like I said before, and I've said in previous things, we are still learning about everything out there. So working on our knowledge, and we're just trying to help spread our knowledge as we learn. So that's what our foraging vlogs are. We don't claim to be, I guess, experts at all, but as we learn, we share what we learn. So that's why we're putting the ramps in there, because they're just coming up now, which is kind of fun. But any other questions? Next week's or the herb of the week will be mulling, and I'll look a lot of stuff up for you guys on that one.
For food forest that just got here, so we were earlier talking about our own beginnings of our own food forest, and that we have decided we are going to put field grasses in our front yard where there's some heavy trees to begin some extra mulching. We're going to put in pasture grass.
Yeah.
And we're going to cut it like a lawn, so it's going to not be a monoculture of traditional grasses. It's going to be a high cut. And I was told it will look fine. We're going to high cut that and try and build soil with that. And we've got some
we have some
clovers and things that are also nitrogen fixers, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then in the back, we've got a pea bean, legume, spring manure crop, as well as we have a chicken specific crop that has chicken goodies and lots of grains and flaxseed and millet and other things, which we're going to grow through 3/4 of an acre or so in our back. We're going to blend those two together in with our wild grasses and flowers, and we're going to create a little chicken food forest this year and see how that goes to rebuild some areas and also add manure and greater materials into our back area.
Yeah, so and be chicken feed for when we're foraging our chickens through our yard. So working on things. We're slowly developing our front, which is mainly, right now has mainly
waiting to take
locusts.
some trees down. Just haven't had time to do that because that's a big job, and we're in the middle of some other big jobs. So
we'll eventually get through some of that.
I need to get one tree down so I can get some firewood for next winter.
Well, you can take that front stand out. They're smaller pieces that So we have a bunch of locusts up front, some maples and black cherries, and along the edge some oaks, but mainly locusts.
It's just locusts that would be some of the locusts would be coming out. The
or
cherries
at least
and
coming.
Maples are definitely staying, especially the maples.
Yeah, and the nice thing about locusts, yes, they are nitrogen fixers. You can eat their flowers, but we can't reach their flowers. And a lot of
they're pretty matured, and they're starting to, of course, they're messy trees that tend to fall over and cause problems.
Yeah, they're leaning and they're dropping branches that are thorny.
Retro suburbia.
So we are going to cut a lot of those down, and maybe not all the way, but let them grow Let some of them resprout from the stumps because they will grow straight out of the stumps. They won't die. Um, and we have not read that yet.
No, I haven't heard of that. The chicken blend I got was actually that was from Urban Homesteader. I grew buying that, and then our ground is it's almost beach sand. It's almost brown,
Oh gosh, yeah.
tan beach sand.
It's
Very
really
limited
fine.
pebbles in it,
Yeah.
and we have about 6 inches of topsoil in most areas, unless it's in a forest area. Then there's about a foot.
But it's still really sandy topsoil.
Yeah, it's still sandy, which is good. It's loose. It's broken up, so we don't retain water, but it's not clay, so we don't hold. Some areas not that far away are too clayey.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, part of it here is being on the eastern side of Lake Michigan. There are a ton of sand dunes up and down. In fact, talk about Florida. We have more waterfront in Michigan than Florida does, by the way. It's just all fresh water. But all up and down the west side of Michigan is all sand. It all blows off of out of basically from the waves of the lake.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of. We're taking our leaves into our garden, and so we've built quite a bit of soil in our garden. This is going to be season 3. We're 4 or 5 inches of nice soil in the garden, and that's been naturally
nice and soft
produced. And then, I was talking to the guy. So we had an earlier discussion. We had a local seed blend, a fall manure crop I tried to get, but they've kind of gone out of business. So I went to another place. I didn't know much about it. I said, look, I'm looking for this legume blend. It's a alfalfa and legumes and clover blend. He says, well, we used to sell that stuff, but things are changing so radically that we don't carry it anymore. You're just going to have to go online or get it somewhere. And I said, well, I'm looking for the front. I need some seeding for the front. And I was having a hard time figuring out, I said we could put in different things, but I don't know what to put in. What do you recommend? And he goes, well, what do you think about pasture grass? And he goes, you got to cut it high, as high as you can cut it. I said, well, that's great. He says, you don't need a monocrop, right? And I said, that's even better. Sounds perfect. And it'll grow through the seasons and through the different weather, and even year to year it will change slightly as some things kind of die out. And so I said, yeah, pasture grasses would be great, even though we don't have anything to graze it and we're not baling it. We thought it would create extra, would grow in our conditions. So I was excited about that. And then we talked about how we're going to seed it and that we should really injection seed it, but I can't do that. So I'm going to get a seeder, an overseeding machine. I think I can do that. I can't do the back with that because the peas are way too big. It's designed for grass seeds, and I can't get peas and legumes through an overseeding lawn machine. And so then what I did was we got through. He goes, all right, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna plant it. And he goes, and then it'd be really great if a little bit through the season you give it a nice dose of fertilizer. It's like, what do we just, And he was really, really knowledgeable. I was like, I thought we kind of. I guess I didn't say that, but we were. I'm like, I said, we don't really fertilize our yard. I said, I did all that. I worked for high-end landscaping companies in Atlanta in college, and we did all kinds of crazy stuff. And I worked for golf courses doing food, but on golf courses, spent literally millions of dollars on turf. And I said, we're kind of went total opposite end of that at the moment. So it's not going to get fertilized. So we need to find ways for it to exist and survive, if not thrive, without putting a dose of fertilizer.
Self-fertilize, basically, do it more naturally. Yes. So basically, I mean, I did actually watch your videos, Food Forest Permaculture, or at least 1 or 2 of them on the soil banking, and that was kind of a cool method too. We're doing kind of in our garden, we're doing more of back to Eden style, but with leaf mulch instead of wood chips, just because that's what we have on hand. So we're just using everything here. So it is a lot of stuff.
And then we're also using our chickens
for fertilizer.
Our deep bedding chicken and wood mulch on top of that with the leaves. We have done a little compost tea, but we need to develop that more.
Yeah.
We
We
don't
haven't done
really
it
have a
here, so-
setup for a larger, to do a little bit larger batch, but I'm very excited
Yeah.
about that. I know that's really a wonderful method. I was just talking to, I was at the farmer's market selling my pasta, and I had a guy who does research and works for a for-profit company doing compost teas and solving major greenhouse and almost like industrial issues by mostly compost tea systems and creating different systems that are a little less expensive and some large, mass systems. And I was talking to him, and I said, "Well, what about compost tea? And is there any drawbacks, or is there any, how late can you put it on? Of course, if you get it hot enough, you get a full bacteria kill, and you get a competitive bacteria against your negative or dangerous bacteria." He goes, "No, there's no problems, because if you do it right," and he does microscopy analysis of the teas for these organizations. He was telling me about how he got all these fruit peels, and usually gets like no or one nematode, and he had like 200 nematodes on a slide because these people were composting with some leftover fruit material, and then they had all the nematodes and were making fruit and making compost tea. So that was really neat pop-up discussion that took place. So
yeah, so I mean, part of why we don't have a real compost system is because there's only 2 of us in this house, so we're limited on kitchen scrap.
Well, we're using the chickens,
and we're feeding it to the chickens, basically.
Yeah.
So really what's happening over the winter is that the run material becomes our compost. Whatever they didn't eat, and whatever they pooped becomes, mixes in with all the bedding, and we take that and move it to the beds.
There were times when I had when I would bring home a couple 100 pounds of restaurant waste. I would try and target it to, like, when we had big parties or something, and we were cleaning a lot of cleaning a lot of fruit or a lot of vegetables or specific things I knew we didn't have in our garden, and I would grab a couple 100 pounds sometimes at a clip and bulk up our compost, and that worked really nice.
Yeah. So we did have more compost in New York, but we didn't have chickens that we were feeding in New York. So, but we're actually we're wrapping up here. So it's actually 9:15, and I know the aldermans are on, so we're running a bit over. But if you missed the beginning, please feel free to check out after we close out, when everything processes. You'll be able to rewatch the beginning and kind of go through what we were talking about earlier. But yeah, we have a lot of gardening stuff coming up and videos coming soon, food forest, permaculture, so you should check those out if you're interested. But I guess we will wrap up now, and Mullen is the next week's herb of the week, and we'll see how many videos I get edited. I have 3 to do on already filmed, and maybe I could get you the camera to take on Tuesday, if I could show you how to use the camera, and get some video on your field trip too.
Yeah, I'll have to see. That might be.
Lots of things going on. We'll get that put together as much as we can. But we will see you next week, every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we try to wrap up by 9, but obviously we go over quite a bit. So I will say good night, and I hope everyone has a good week. I hope you had a good Easter last week. And we'll see you next week.
Mm-hmm. Good night.
Oh, and I should probably pull up the thing that says stop the live stream. Good night, guys.